Hey everybody, Ken Panagopoulos here, also known as the Lazy Gourmet, with you today for some Greek style stuffed pepper, zucchini, and eggplant. This recipe is very easy, very simple. It actually takes more time to cook than it does to prepare. So here we're going to start off with about a pound of lean to extra lean ground beef. I use beef, but you can use pretty much anything you like, whether it be ground chicken, turkey, pork will work as well for this recipe. No problems at all. So next thing is we get some chopped onions. I here am using a couple of smaller sized onions that I happen to have from my garden, which actually works pretty good. But typically you may use just a medium to larger size onion, chopped any way you like. Whether you do it finely chopped or coarser chopped, it's totally okay. This recipe is very forgiving and actually works either way. What I have found though is the smaller the cut of the onion or the chop, the easier it is in terms of the flavor profile. You don't get as pronounced of an onion flavor. You just kind of feel it or taste it in the background. So in that goes, very easy. We keep just throwing it in there, and from there we just keep building on this, which is the base of our dish. All right, next thing we have to add in is our garlic. I usually use the pre-minced packaged garlic that you get from the grocery store. I find it very easy and very convenient to use, and it's a lot simpler. But if you're choosing to use your own cloves, a couple of finely minced cloves will work just fine for this dish. You don't want to overpower it, but again, you want to have that just going in the background very easy and very simply. And then the main kind of flavor that we use in this in terms of herbs is mint and parsley. And a small bunch of each will do. You don't need to kind of blow it out of the water with overpowered of mint or of parsley. Finely chop or coarse chop, totally up to you. It doesn't really matter as long as it's something that you enjoy. So we finally chop up the parsley and the mint and just throw it in there. Very easy again, no fuss, and that's all there is to it for now. At this stage of the game, we want to add our seasoning, our salt and pepper. So I'm usually very, very conservative when it comes to salt, but it's always to taste. Pepper is pepper. Pepper makes everything better. So you can just add that and to your taste and to whatever you prefer. And of course, an abundance of Greek extra virgin olive oil. I like to use this very, very generously. It adds a very distinct and delicious flavor, and it's just part of the whole dish of this experience. All we use a lot of olive oil. What could I say? I have an affinity for obvious reasons. Now, the next part of this is the rice. I use whole wheat rice, in this case brown rice, only because it's a preference, but you can use white rice, long grain rice, short grain. Quinoa is also very, very popular in this because it's on a more of a health kind of aspect of this, so that'll work as well. Once all your meat is mixed up and everything is all incorporated, we move along by creating the sauce or the juice that will actually braise and cook the rice that's in the stuffing of the vegetables. In this case, very easy. You have two options. Option one is what I use here, which is a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste and diluted with water, or you can just puree some tomatoes or use the canned tomatoes if you prefer. Either or will work just great. I happen to have this, and so I'm using this. Typically though, whatever works, whatever's easiest for you, there's no set ground rules. Whether you grate tomatoes, whether you get the canned or you just use what I do with the tomato paste, totally fine. You take this mixture of the tomato paste and water and you put approximately half of this into the minced meat and the herbs and rice mixture and start mixing. When you start mixing this, it will also add a fair bit of moisture to this while it actually cooks. And here we have our fresh vegetables that we're going to use to stuff. I'm using tomato, eggplants, and zucchini only because this is what I had in my garden. I picked it earlier today, so why not? I'm all for the farm to table or garden to table movement. I think it's awesome. I think it's very healthy and a lot more delicious than typically the stuff you will find, especially out of season in the grocery stores. So very carefully, we just cut out the tops of these tomatoes, and the whole idea of this is to keep the tomato body itself intact while coring the inside of the tomato. Typically in these dishes, traditionally, when they made these kind of stuffed peppers or stuffed veggies, they would take the cut out insides of the vegetables, chop them up even more, and add them to the stuffing mixture. For my purposes, I just keep it simple. I just discard it and just keep the stuff open, so that way you can just stuff it more with the ground meat and rice. So moving along, the same thing goes for the eggplant. Top the eggplant off, remove the stem, and then from there, just very easily use a big spoon, like a tablespoon, and cut and core the insides of these vegetables. It's really not that hard. The fact is, whatever works for you, do it. There's nothing, there's no set rule for this. Zucchini is really incredible to use in this recipe only because it actually develops a sweetness as it bakes, and it is absolutely delicious, especially if you leave it with a little bit of a thicker wall when you core it. It actually adds some body to it, which is really awesome. And finally, the last tomato. I'm personally very picky when it comes to the veggies I stuff. A lot of people will stuff anything. These are pretty well my favorites, and they're pretty much the easiest to stuff. Tomato being my favorite of the three, only because it adds a certain amount of a flavor that I really like. Also, if you want to stuff peppers, you absolutely can. I typically recommend the red bell type peppers or the elongated peppers only because they're easier and larger in size. What I'm doing here, just for your FYI, is I'm actually taking my knife and puncturing the bottoms and the sides of the hollowed out veggies, only because I want the moisture and the steam and the heat to actually penetrate and help actually cook the beef, the ground beef, and the rice that's in this dish. Nothing worse than having tartar when you're not supposed to have any. Once this is done, typically all you have to do is, whether you use a spoon or your hands, take the minced meat mixture, the stuffing, and just start stuffing away. You don't want to overstuff these veggies only because the rice expands, and the last thing you want is having a dish with exploded veggies in it. So here, what I'm going to do is I typically stuff it about 3/4 of the way up the vegetable, so that way there is room to expand, and as the rice does cook, it will actually grow up rather than just out if it's too much. Once again, the use of extra virgin olive oil. I like to drizzle all my dishes lightly at the end before baking with a little bit of olive oil. Again, it adds to the flavor and to the texture. And we now take the rest of our tomato paste mixture that we were using earlier. I added some more water to dilute it and just add it over the veggies. Easy, nothing to it. That is actually going to be your cooking and braising liquid for these. Now that basically it's ready to go, we've preheated our oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius. And in order for these to effectively cook and steam, if you don't have a covered dish, you can use a covered cooking dish, or what I do is I just cover it with foil. Very, very easy, very simple. Cover it with foil, and what you're going to do is pop it in a 400 degree oven for 1 hour covered, and once you're done that, you go in, remove the aluminum foil, and bake it for another hour uncovered at 400 degrees. So here is the finished product. It only took a couple hours, but the preparation is way worth it. So now, to plate it up, very simply, grab your plate and a handy dandy spatula, and grab the stuffed zucchini and the tomato right there. Real quick. Here you have the Greek style stuffed tomatoes, eggplants, and zucchini.